Dear students, welcome to the video tutorial on open source and open standards related to ILS, that is Integrated Library System. Here in this tutorial, we are going to study what is open source, how open source is shaping the formation and development of ILS, and what are the role open standards are playing to develop and implementing integrated library system. So, let us imagine that right from the 90s a new wave of knowledge has started, that is called open knowledge movement or open knowledge network. So, these open knowledge networks are based on 4 fundamental components. The first one is the open and distributed information system, which we colloquially called internet. Then on the top of this open and distributed information system, another movement started, that is called open source software and open standards. So, entire internet related systems and services are based on open source software. The moment you are accessing a web server, you are accessing different open source software like Apache web server, you are using different open standard like TCP IP, etc. So, on the top of these 2 fundamental factors, open and distributed information system and open source software and open standard, 2 products are coming. One is called open access publishing system, another is called open learning resources. So, here I have given you the whole scenario of open knowledge movement or open knowledge network, but here in this tutorial we are going to study how open source software and open standards are shaping the formation and development of integrated library system. As I told you that open and distributed information system is acting as a platform for scholarly communication, open source software is acting as ingredients for building the services and utilities on this open and distributed information system, and 2 products we are getting, open access open contents through open access publishing and open learning system, because this particular video tutorial is also a product of open learning system. Now, first thing first we need to know what is open source software, which is formally known as free libre open source software or FLOSS. Because the term free in English language has dual meaning, one is that is the free of cost, another is the freedom. So, free libre open source software is basically associated with the meaning freedom. It is not always free, it is the freedom associated with the software. That is why the term libre is attached with the free to give the due weightage to the freedom part of the FLOSS. Now, if we consider, if I ask you that what is a software, you will say a software is a set of programs. And what is a program? A program is a set of instruction. Now, if I ask you what is instruction, then you will say an instruction is a command given to computer. So, how a software program developed? First we write the source code, then we compile the source code into object code. Here in this particular snapshot you can see the movement is from the source code, then we throw that source code into compiler to develop object code, and object code is attached with lot of routine library functions and finally given as executable code. Now, the thing is that the entire process is irreversible. That means when you are writing a source code, you are throwing that source code to compiler, compiler generates the binary code, but from binary code you cannot go back to source code. And this is basically the key feature which is utilized by software company to sell software to you. They always give you the binary code, not the source code. So, for n number of times you can run that binary code for your use, but the moment you need to change something, you need to have the source code, and that is why they are called closed source. They are not giving you the source code, they are giving you the binary code, and from binary code you cannot go back to the source code. That is the software development process, because the process is irreversible. Let me show you an example. Here in the screen you can see that I have written a very simple C program that is called the source code. It will generate the line welcome to the national configuration for 10 times. Say I have taken here I is equal to 0, it will start from 0, I less than is equal to 9. That means this loop will be repeated for 10 times, and for each repetition it will generate or print a particular line welcome to national conference. Now this is called the source code. The name of this source code is C1.c. My next step is to develop the software is to throw this particular source code to compiler. Here you see I have given the command tcc c1.c. Now the moment I throw this particular program to the Turbo C compiler, and if there is no error, Turbo C will give you, or rather give me, a set of related program. Here you see that is my source code C1.c, only 151 bytes. Then it generates also an object code 372 bytes, and finally it generates that C1.exe, the binary code, which is around 6612 bytes. And you see the difference of size between these three entities. The source code is the smallest one what we have written. Then after throwing we are getting the final product, the executable code or the binary code, which is large in size. Now if I want to sell this software to you, I will give you this file c1.exe, that is the binary code, and you can run this particular program for n number of time by giving c1 or c1.exe, and it will produce 10 lines by saying that welcome to the national conference. Now imagine you need to repeat the lines for 25 times. You only have the binary code. You do not have any option to change from 10 to 11 or to reduce from 10 to 8. You have to come to me. I will change in the source code, I will recompile the product, I will resell you and charge you heavily for every modification and rectification of the software, and you always will get the binary version of the thing. So the moment you need to change something, you need to have source code. You need to change in the source code level, recompile the thing, and you can generate your binary code. That is the process. And software vendor never give you the source code, they always give you the binary code, and this is the process of the whole software industry. Now after this brief deliberation of what is the software and how it basically how is it how it is produced basically through compiling and 3 different steps, that is source code, object code and binary code. Again I am asking you, what is the software? Now one particular computer science professionals gave a very funny definition of software. He said, I will be telling you the name of that software engineer. A software is a digital version of human knowledge. And how he has explained it? He said that if you are developing an accountancy, say for example a package to manage accounts, you need to have the domain knowledge how accounts are maintained. If you want to develop a library automation software, you need to know how library operates, what are the functional activities of the library, and on the top of that knowledge you are writing a software, you are writing the codes and you are giving it to people for automating libraries or automating office or automating accounting system. So in that case, is not that software is solely based on the knowledge which is already available in the public domain? Most of the cases yes. Say for example we are using different library automation software, these are based on the thinking, these are based on the writings and concepts given by different stalwarts from over the last 400 years and available in the public domain. So we are using that public domain knowledge available freely. On the basis of that we are writing a software and we are selling that software to the people. So we are repackaging the knowledge and we are selling the software, and someone, that particular software engineer said it is unethical. If a software is a digital version of the knowledge and if that knowledge is freely available in the public domain, so there is no ethical reason that a person can sell a software, because he is selling the already available knowledge in the public domain. And the name of that software engineer is Richard Stallman. He in 1984 he started the whole open source movement. He named that movement as FSF, Free Software Foundation. He started the GNU project. Then he already developed Linux was developed by Linus Torvalds in the late 80s. So that 93 rather. So that product is actually produced through FSF movement as GNU Linux, and it changed the entire game rule of the software industry. Then onwards, Linux becomes the industry standard for different kind of system. Lot of open source projects are coming. In libraries, I will show you how many open source softwares are available. So it started a new era of computing, and he said, Richard Stallman said that if software is not available freely, then if only a very few very powerful people would dominate computing. So the open source movement actually set a electronic democracy for the computing domain. So in the spring of 1997, a group of leaders in the free software community assembled in California, and that time it was called as free software. Then they coined the term open source software under the leadership of Eric Raymond, and they started the Debian project and many other sister projects related to the open source software. I am not going into details of the history of open source here. I just want to tell you in nutshell what is an open source software and why this movement is so important for libraries. So that particular group taken the name open source, they defined what are the open source, then formed a group called OSI group, designed OSI certification process, created a list of licenses so that open source software can be available legally through people to change, to modify, to customize, to use, to reuse for different purposes. So that domain and that particular name is now popular, open source in place of the free software. It says that a particular software is open if the source code of that software is made freely available along with the binary version, so that anyone can see, change and distribute it subject to the condition he or she abide by the accompanying license. And most of the cases licenses are very open in nature. That means you can use this software, you can change this software, you can distribute this software, you can modify this software, you can redistribute the software. All kind of rights are associated with this kind of open source software. Now they also recommended a set of features for open source software. These are called 10 commandments of open source software. Finally, it should be freely distributed, source code must be available, derived work, that means a software based on that source code must also be available as open source, integrity of the author's original source code must be maintained, no discrimination against persons or groups, no discrimination against any field of endeavor, distribution of license, mostly these are available under GPL, general public license, license must not be specific to a particular product. So that means it will be a general license and a particular product may released on the basis of that license. It should not be restricted to that particular product only. The license must not restrict other software and the license must be technology neutral. So these 10 recommendations they have given, and if a particular software supports all these 10, then only you can name this particular software as open source software. So right from our childhood days we know that software is of two types, either is the system software or application software, but please remember that is as per the domain of activities. If we want to divide the software as per the distribution policy, we can have two groups of software primarily, closed source software and open source software. Closed source software can again be of two types, commercially available closed source and freely available closed source. These are called freewares. And I said you earlier that CDS is a classical example of freeware. It is available freely, but the source code is closed. And in the open source domain, I will give you number of examples associated with the library domain. Now, if we go for a quick comparative study between the closed source freeware and open source, In case of closed source software, only binary file is available. Against license fees we have to pay to procure. No source code is available, and as no source code is available, you cannot customize to suit our local needs. Freeware, binary file is available freely, but at the same time no source code, no customization. In case of open source software, both binary and source code are available free of cost, and as source codes are available with us, we can go for extensive level of customization in case of open source software. As a whole, we can say that free libre open source software, if we talk about the library system, it gives us freedom to operate at the system level. In case of a commercial ILS, a librarian is mere data entry operator. He or she cannot change anything rather. But in case of open source software, you can operate at the system level. You can help community computing. You can go for extensive customization through modification of the source code. It provides power to modify and distribute, because the changed source code you can redistribute to n number of friends and other libraries. And free, that means freedom to access, browse, view, study, modify and redistribute the source code. So finally, an open source software is associated with the 3 F, that is fund, freedom and fraternity, and mostly they are distributed through GPL, that is called GNU public license. Some of the major flaws available with us is Linux operating system. I already told you. Apache web server, 93% of the web server nowadays are using Apache web server. Mozilla Firefox, you must have experience to access internet through Mozilla Firefox. It is an open source product. Then PostgreSQL, RDBMS, MySQL as relational database management system, different programming languages, GNU, C compiler, Perl, PHP, Java, Mathematica. So in number of major FLOSS available, on the top of which we can develop different application programs. So most of the application programs are basically using or based on the LAMP architecture, Linux as operating system, Apache as web server, MySQL as backend database management system, Perl and PHP as programming environment. Now, what are the domain specific flaws available for the user in libraries? My answer is that you name it, we have it. You place your demand, we have an open source candidate, and interestingly, in most of the cases we have number of equally good candidates. From those candidates you can select one. For example, if you look into the list, if you want to start a discussion forum, we have PHP-BB, Mini-BB, Discuss and many more. If you want to start a library blog, we have WordPress, Blogger. You want to develop a digital library, we have Greenstone, Dispace, Fedora, iTor, MyCore, ePrint, n number. Library automation, we have 14 library automation system, Koha, Emilda, PHP My Library, Evergreen, Webbliss. E-learning, we have Moodle, eTutor, OpenCourseWare, Brihaspati is an Indian product, .lrn, all are available in different domains. So as this particular tutorial is associated with ILS, again let us compare what are the total open source ILS available. We have total of 14 number of open source ILS available. This can be grouped into 3 groups: fairly matured group, moderately matured group and infancy group. In the fairly matured group we have Emilda, Evergreen, Koha and NewgenLib. I already told you NewgenLib is a product from India. Koha is possibly the first and the most comprehensive ILS available presently with us, and there are different other groups you can see that. Now if you want to go for the office automation, in place of this one MS Office we have OpenOffice, in place of Photoshop we have GIMP, in place of PowerPoint slide presenter we have Impress. Graphics we can use Irfan View, Picasa. Text retrieval we have n number of retrieval tools, Zebra, Solar, Suisi, HTDig, etc. Web authoring tool, HTML Pro, XML Maker and what not, as I already told you, you name it, we have it. So this is the present situation. For each and every activities in your library you can use open source software, n number of candidates are available and those are equally good, you need to select any one of it from the group. Most of the open source softwares are available from a repository. That repository is called sourceforge.net, and here you can see you can either browse or you can either search. Suppose I am searching this SourceForge for unit converter program. So, it will list all kind of program here and it will be listed on the basis of number of downloads, so that you can readily understand which particular software. As I already told you, for any domain there are n number of candidates, but from SourceForge you can readily understand which one is the most popular on the basis of download statistics. So, if we go for a quick sum up, OS is typically created and maintained by the developer crossing institutional and national boundaries, collaborating by using internet based communication channels. Mostly the process of development follows the famous Linus law, that is release early, release often and listen to your user. In most of the open source software related to libraries, at least they have twice in a year release cycle. For example, Koha releases in every May and every November. DSpace releases in every June and every December. So, in each and every year you will be getting at least 2 releases, and that is following the first law of open source: release early, release often and listen to your users. Quality not profit actually drives the open source developer, and intellectual property does not belong to a particular vendor, it belongs to the public domain. And here it is interesting to note the concept given by Eric Morgan. Eric Morgan is a famous librarian, the professional evangelist in the open source domain. He said that both the camp, the library world and the open source community are working towards the same objective, that is both the camp wants to make knowledge free. And as informed citizenship is a necessity for effective democracy, open source software movement is necessity for the improvement of the computer applications. So, this famous quoting you can have from Eric Morgan 2002, and this particular catchline is basically helping libraries or library professionals to set the future, and they said open is the future. Now, there are some views in favor of FLOSS and some views against FLOSS in libraries. In case of views which are in favor of the use of FLOSS in libraries, promotes that open source license allow libraries to cut budget on software and use it to other productive areas. OSS product is not locked to a single vendor, so we can always hire programmer to go for modification, customization, etc. The entire library community might share the responsibility of solving a particular problem, and it actually promotes the international fraternity of librarianship. Say for example, I got a problem, I posted it, someone from Pakistan responded, so you got a international brotherhood of librarians through open source movement, and it is happening every day in the library domain. OSS is an economical alternative to costly commercial software. That means the real cost of procuring and maintaining commercial software is much higher in compared with the usage of open source software, because licensing, upgrading and maintenance always is mostly free in case of open source software. Open source is essential if libraries are to develop software and system that meet their patron needs. That means as it is as it allows you to go for extensive customization, you can suit that particular software according to your needs and requirements. Another important thing, we should also study the views against FLOSS in LIS. Those who are against the application of FLOSS in LIS, they says that OSS generally demands higher level of technical knowledge to install and maintain it. Definitely it is true, it requires a steep learning curve if your library staff wants to learn it. Users who migrate to open source application face a steep learning curve, offers new opportunities, but also raise a number of challenges for the library and information community, and not an easy option for small scale libraries. So, these are the views against the use of FLOSS in libraries. Another important thing is the availability of the open standards. There are two kind of standards presently available. One is the de jure standard or the proprietary standard, and another is the voluntary or cooperative standards, which we also called open standards. An open standard is open because of the following feature: it is accessible and free of charge to all, that is there is no inequality between users, no payment or other consideration. It remains always accessible. All aspects of the standards are transparent, that well documented and freely available. So, these are the open standard, and fortunately in the library domain right from the beginning we are using open standard. Say for example, your ISBD is an open standard, you are using ASCR2 as cataloging code, open standard. So, presently in the library automation domain we are using Mark 21, a set of open standard, Mark XML, another open standard, OAIPMH as metadata harvesting protocol, open standard, SRU, SRW in place of Z39.50, all are open standards. So, library world is basically shaping on the top of open source software and open standards. And in summary, we can say a new future is awaiting for us, and that future will be open on the basis of open source software and open standards. Thank you.